Welcome back, gang. It's Deltia from Deltiasgaming.com. Do you like the new setup? Look, update 36 Firesong DLC has dropped in the public test server and subsequent patch notes. And for once, Elder Scrolls Online heard you loud and clear. Stop with the massive changes in gear sets. But is this actually good for the game? Is there a lot of meat and a lot of potatoes to this update? And the future of Elder Scrolls Online, not into 2022, but also into the future. Now I'm going to explain this in this video and more. So watch the video! So let me break down what's coming into Update 36 and going in the future in Elder Scrolls Online. And if you get something out of this video, make sure to click that like and subscribe if you want more. I want to answer two important questions before you click off this video. Number one, how big are the changes? And number two, why is Quarter 4 so important in the Elder Scrolls Online? If Update 35 were about a 10 out of 10 in terms of size and scope of changes, consider this update about a 2 out of 10. Now, why is that so important in the Elder Scrolls Online? Well, you have November 1st is the last bit of content we get, and it takes clear till roughly the end of February, middle of February, or March before we get another DLC. Meaning, if they nail the balancing, they nail how this game feels and plays, you're going to have a great holiday season and an early start to 2023. But the exact opposite is true. If they don't nail it, it's really stale in PvE and PvP, the population dwindles, and MMO market is only as good and robust as the player base, frankly. So this is absolutely critical to nail Update 36 for about 4 to 5 months of gameplay in the Elder Scrolls Online. With Update 35 previously, you received some of the most massive overhaul the game has ever seen in a single update, and let's just say this was not well received. There are two different types of analytics and charts to show you different player base drops and so forth, and I'm not going to get into that, but both anecdotally and quantitatively, yeah, those are big words, I went to college. The portion of Elder Scrolls Online population did dwindle. You can just go in Craglorn, you can look at Cyrodiil, you can just see the lack of friends and interest. I haven't been making a lot of videos on this because, well, I love Elder Scrolls Online and I want people to play it, and I personally enjoy it. But I've noticed that a lot of myself, when I log into my friend list, is sitting at 1 or 2, and before, in early May and June, it was sitting at 10, 15, 20. It just shrunk a lot. Why is that? Because a lot of people play this game a couple hours in the evening or on the weekends when they're off work or school, and constantly grinding out new gear sets every 3 months and relearning your build, your class, your rotation was a huge turnoff. And that's what Update 35 did. Elder Scrolls Online population reactive, well, with their money and their time and their attention by moving off of the game and saying, you know what, we're going to pause, we're going to see what happens next update. And here it is. So I took from the Elder Scrolls Online Live last Friday that they were not going to make a lot of changes. They posted a combat preview, which didn't really have a whole lot. And then they also did the ESO Live, where the community managers both reinforced, hey, we're not going to change a lot this patch. Meaning loud and clear, they understood going into this, we are tired of the changes. We are tired of the grinding. Let us use Pillars Nirn for at least 4 months before you nerf it in the ground. And finally, we got that. So enough rambling about that context. You had Update 35, huge uproar. They listened, and now this is what you can expect from Update 36 along with the DLC. Keep in mind, DLC, you just either have to buy it separately or you have to subscribe to get access to it. The chapter once a year is the only thing you have to purchase additionally outside of an ESO subscription. So if you're subscribed, you should have access to this day one. And in this DLC, you're going to get a new zone. So this is great for people who like to explore, like to do the story. You're going to have antiquities, tons of achievements, just little collectibles that keep you playing the Elder Scrolls Online, like pretty much always. You're also going to have new gear sets, and thankfully these don't just seem to be super overpowered or busted. You're going to have 3 new overland sets, 3 craftable sets that you can craft in that actual zone, and then 3 new mythics. So you're going to have some quality of life changes like a targeted marketing system. So if an opponent, you're in PvP, you have a healer, you want everyone to target them, you can mark them, or in PvE, various different marks that you can have for, the priority target or a secondary target or who the second tank needs. And basically this is commonplace in ESO. You're also going to have hide pets in zone. So if you are like me and can't stand the 450 pet sork builds running around Deshaun all the time, you can hide them. You're also going to have new armory stations in Cyrodiil and Imperial City, along with a lot of housing quality of life, which I really don't understand because I don't do housing. But let's get to the nitty gritty in the gear sets. Now look, I was in the opinion they were going to completely nerf or change and really incentivize you to get a bunch of new gear sets from the DLC, kind of like last year Quarter 4 with Markin specifically, but I don't think so. So I kind of overreacted when I read some of these gear sets. but actually playing with them, they did not seem to be super over the top powerful where you have to get them and use them for every build. Maybe I'll be wrong, but the initial impressions, initial testing, seem pretty fairly balanced. For once. I love you, boo. So the overland sets, we have 3. Light, medium, and heavy. The first set, Back Alley Gourmand? Gourmet? What's the word I can't pronounce? The 5-piece. When you have a food buff active, your critical damage and critical healing is increased by 13%. Now, I tested this pretty extensively on the PTS, and I used my Templar, and so I did a couple of different tests with Deadly Strikes, and then I did Overwhelming Surge, and then I did Order's Wrath, and then I did this new set. And it looks like the target here is really to replace Order's Wrath or make it very comparable. And the numbers were very comparable. I just did a 3 mil parse dummy, but they were roughly 1k DPS apart. Now, the critical damage is really nice if you're running the Thief Mundus Stone, because you can get right around 60%, and this performed pretty much identical to Order's Wrath. So if you had that set from the High Isles, I wouldn't see like going out and going, yay, I have to replace it, because Order's Wrath gives you about 943 crit chance. So yes, you get about 5% more critical damage, but you're losing about 4% roughly critical chance, and it's kind of a push or a wash, so that was good. Next setup, medium, Phoenix, Moth, some word I can't pronounce. You're gonna see a lot of that here. I can't pronounce things. The 5-piece, healing yourself or an ally grants the target minor courage and minor force for 10 seconds, increasing weapon and spell damage by 215 and their critical damage done by 10%. This effect can occur every 12 seconds per target. So if you have a built-in way to heal a lot of targets, I could see this being very useful. It comes in medium. What I think would prevent this from being used in PvE is 2 lines of stamina recovery. So this might be a PvP set or some other niche set, but I don't think this replaces any major thing in PvE or PvP currently. Then you have a heavy set, Bastion of another word I can't pronounce. I'm just going to call it D. Oh, never mind. This is YouTube. We're going to call it something else. Bastion of something. The 5-piece, blocking an attack grants you a stack of inflection for 10 seconds, up to 3 stacks. You gain 1 stack every half second. Increase your magic and stamina recovery by 106 per stack of whatever that word is. Maybe I should take a reading course. At least my sign is spelled correctly. But all seriousness, this is kind of a goofy set. Maybe you would use as a tank just sitting there holding block. But a lot of times tanks are getting back resources doing heavy attacks or using the balance from the Mages Guild, or if you're a Dragon Knight, you just pop an ultimate and say, God bless America, YOLO, and pop up to full resources. So I don't see this being that useful at all. So you have 3 kind of meh sets in the overlay, which is good for a change. We don't have to replace all of our gear. Moving on to crafting, you got Shimra's Rebuke. The 5-piece, gaining resources from a fully charged heavy attack also restores 2,363 of the gained resource to 3 allies nearest your target. This seems like a decent set for a healer since it's craftable. You can get it right away, and you don't have to get like Hollow Fang's Thirst or Stone Talkers, which is one from a dungeon. One is from a trial, so a beginner could rip off fully charged heavy attacks on their pack bar with Lightning Staff, and perfect for a dungeon resource sustain set for either a healer or maybe a tank, even though you're not doing a whole lot of fully charged heavy attacks. So you can see this was really directed at basic niche type plays and builds instead of the broad community where everyone's going to have to replace their pillars or Nern Reliquins or Sororias. Not so fast. And next we have an Old Growth Brewer. Interesting set. The 5-piece. After drinking a potion, gain 245 magic, stamina, or health recovery for 45 seconds. If you don't know, potions last 45 seconds, so I can't see this being used instead of something like Wretched Vitality. That 245 magic, stamina, and health recovery just looks like Amber Plasm, except you just have to drink a potion. And Wretched Vitality requires a major and minor buff, which you almost always have from a skill on your back bar. So I can't see this really replacing anything, but it's a craftable option if you don't have the High Isles. And last up for the craftable, we have Claw of Forest Wrath. Adds 2,037 crit chance to your class abilities. So this is a lot of crit chance, and when I was streaming this live, it just screams Templar. Because a Templar, specifically a Stamplar, you can use dual wield. You use Biting Jab, you're probably using Beam as your execute, you're really not using Whirling Blades. And this also might be useful for a Dragon Knight, something that's pretty much reliant dominant on your class-specific skill lines and weapon skill lines. A lot of crit chance, but you're noticing something here. This is probably not going to outperform the sets you're already using. It just gives you a little bit of flexibility and options. Moving on to the 3 Mythics. Now, when I read this tooltip, it's going to sound absolutely extraordinary, but let me explain. It's not busted. Because when I read this, I kind of overreacted and freaked out. The first one is a medium chest. Fawn's Lark Cladding. Yes, that's the name. The One Piece Mythic. If you continuously sprint for 1 second, you gain the ability to pass through enemies. Enemies you pass through become charmed for 4 seconds, removing their ability to attack or cast abilities as they move towards you, charming the enemy. This way restores 678 stamina and health, and also heals you for 6, 7, 8 health. Charming an enemy removes you from stealth. So when I read this initially, total freak out, but when I actually played it, it's kind of easy to actually avoid this, number one, because someone has to charge into you. Number two, you can just CC break. So when I read charm for 4 seconds, you can't use your abilities, this is true. It acts as like a different type of CC. So when a Nightblade fears you, for instance, in PvP, your character just kind of does this and wobbles along. When you're charmed with this, you can move and you can CC break. When you have CC immunity, which is roughly about 7 seconds, I think, by default, you can't be re-engaged by this either. Now, it's one of the coolest looking sets in the game, but actual reality, you'd hit a movable potion, they can't mess with you. They have to actually charge right through you to get this. Doesn't really do that much, and you can CC break. So yeah, it might be a niche set to charge into Cyrodiil and keep screaming, God bless America, and try to drop a Dawnbreaker on someone. Outside of that, I really can't see this being a meta game-changing set. In its early testing, it wasn't that impressive. It reads a lot cooler than it actually is. But my God, they nailed the visual effects. It's amazing. Moving on. Next up, Light Leg Stormweaver's Cavort adds 300 magic recovery, and essentially what this does is sprint, roll, dodge, pass, break free, sneak, and block now consume magic instead of stamina. You cannot regain magic while blocking, streaking, sprinting, and you can gain stamina while blocking, sneaking, or sprinting. So it just flippy-floppies magic and stamina. Now, the Mages Guild has a unique ability called Balance, where you can basically exchange health for magic. And I could see kind of some weird, goofy combination of that being used here, but I can't see giving up Sea Serpent's Coil, Gaze of Sithis, Torque, any of the game-changing mythics like Markins and so on, to do a little bit more dodge rolling and sacrifice this. I just can't see that being used as a one piece. Now we have a Troll tank set, probably designed for PvP. Great! I'll see you at Chalman, all you Nord Dragonite EP fans, because this mythic's for you. Siraban's Ward. Great set here. You cannot move while bracing. It's a heavy belt. While bracing, you create a 12-meter zone of protection. Allies within the zone increase their block mitigation by 30% and their health recovery by 950. Did I mention you can't move using this set? So seriously, you can't move. It's one of the coolest looking effects in the game. This big purple, I just spam block a bunch of times and spam it like big bright flashing lights. You might have a siege room when you look at this, I'm sorry. But you don't gain the block mitigation health recovery, everyone else does inside. So this really has almost zero use, I think, in PvE, unless I'm missing something for the hard mode trials or something. But PvP, you're gonna have those ding-dongs that love to sit there and click one button, which is their block, and then have this big, huge bubble pop up and go, hey, let's have a block party. And not the kind where you get together and you socialize and you have cocktails and chips. No, it's an EP block night party. So not that game-breaking stuff yet, and I think that's a really good sign for me, because I was like, man, am I gonna have to get another mythic? Am I gonna have to replace all my Order's Wrath? I was wagering that Pillars of Nirn would be completely shot. It wasn't. I was completely wrong. And they really did listen on the big changes. Now, a couple of class changes to go over, and we're going to start with my beloved Templar. And no, Chabs isn't back. The Templar Backlash. So this is the Dawn's Wrath ability, and you have two morphs, Power of Light, and you have Purifying Light. Now, the changes are quite lengthy in text. Essentially, the final damage now deals a guaranteed amount of damage based on your highest offensive stat, rather than dealing damage based on the damage it took from you over duration with a cap based on weapon and spell damage. Oh, sorry. That's one bullet point. Let's keep going. The final damage deals approximately 10% more damage than the initial hit at base and increases up to 200% to reach similar values of power seen before. So when I read this, I'm like, crap, you nursed the one busting tool my Templar had left. But in fact, I was wrong. I overreacted. Sorry, I'm a YouTuber. I gotta clickbait you. But honestly, it hit almost the exact same. It almost hit the exact same on the Parsnip. I think I got a 32,000 crits self-buffed on my Templar, and that's roughly the same on the exact same 3 mil Parsnip. So it still seems like a really solid bursting tool, and if you applied that to PvP, well, you just cut it in half by 50%, and you would still get big, massive, nasty crits. This would still be a valid way to burst someone down, though I haven't tested it extensively in PvP. Just off the bat, it seemed to be okay. Moving on to Lord Warden! on. So Animal Companion Advanced Species, this passive got changed. So currently it does Armor Pen because I just made a video on this, so naturally they have to change it. This passive now increases your crit damage done by 1 and 3% at max. So expect not as much pen, which kind of nerfs a little bit in PvP. But the crit damage is really nice because it's going to help the light armor Magnan who doesn't need really any pen in PvE. It's going to get some crit damage as well, which is nice. Next up, the big one here is Winter's Embrace Arctic Blast. Remove the target crap from this damage of this morph, and the damage is no longer tied to stunning enemies, so it's going to be even more damage dealing, which the word doesn't necessarily need. Now you have an interesting passive change, Piercing Cold. This passive now increases your damage done by 1 and 2%, increases to 5 and 10% while wielding an ice staff, rather than increasing your magic and frost damage by 5 and 10%. So yay, all you Frostins now can front bar ice staff and go, yes, I have a frost build, and roleplay and dress your character up as a frost warden just like you've always wanted. But in seriousness, I don't know if this is going to replace dual wield or a fire staff in PvE. You're going to have some flexibility in PvP because you already get block mitigation with the ice staff. Think about the Masters DSA ice staff in PvP. Very, very strong in its current form. Moving on with a really big change, and that's the Assault Resolving Vigor. This is the stamina-based morph from the Alliance War. It reduced the healing from this morph by 10%. So currently, it's one of the reasons people are so dang tanky in PvP. I would have liked to seen Battle Spirit lower the healing by about 5%. I think would have been a really good sweet spot. But this is going to help a lot, people being super overly tanky and basically pigeonholing magic builds to run the skill because it gives the armor buff, the minor armor buff, and it just heals so strong for such a very small amount of resource. So good change. Khajiit passive got changed here. So this passive now increases your health, magic, and stamina recovery by 90 at their final rank, rather than just health recovery up to 100 and your magic and stamina recovery up to 85, so kind of a unified 90. And now all you Necro Bombers out there, Occulto Overload, I'm sorry you Chad Scythe players, it got nerfed. Reduce the damage per stage of the star to 1337, down from 2560, so totaling, it's going to have a lot more reduction. This node also applies a random status effect to enemies, and it adds a cooldown of 1 second to prevent cascading effects, and the damage no longer has a maximum target cap of 6 people. It looks like Zoss is trying to do two things with both this Occulto Overload and Calorians from the previous patch. It really feels like they're trying to get rid of ganking and they're trying to get rid of bombing. For whatever reason, people must hate that. Look, I'm not a fan of gankers, but I absolutely love bombing on my Necro. Have you seen the clips? But in all seriousness, that's what it points to. Trying to get rid of ganking, trying to get rid of bombing. So Cyrodiil is kind of like a big, huge, sloppy tank fest. Whether you like that or not, that's what it looks like the direction the game's going. So hopefully, PvP-wise, the Resolving Vigor will be enough to lower everyone's survivability significantly, but I still think you need about a 5-6% healing reduction so everyone's not a super mega tank. Now, in my opinion, you don't encounter that in Battlegrounds. Battlegrounds still feel very damage dealing unless you have pocket healers. People die, you have proc sets, because you don't have champion points in Battlegrounds. Thus, people die quickly. It's a really fun environment still. But you get out to Cyrodiil, and it's just a snooze. With champion points, you get all the buffs from continuous attack. People are so tanky that unless you Zerg them 1v30, it's kind of just a sit there tank fight and very little action on the map. And the population has dwindled, unfortunately. Well, gang, that's kind of the major changes that we have here. Like I said, November 1st is when this launches. These are subject to change. They finally listened to us and calmed down on those big, massive changes. And now we have to ask ourselves, is that actually good? I mean, for me as a content creator, look, I like when you come to the website and check out all the builds. Check the link in the description below. There's builds and stuff. But seriously, checking the website, constantly getting something up to date, it does get frustrating for a lot of us, unless you're a content creator like me who basically makes a living doing this. But for the average player, I think this is a home run. You finally know you can adapt to one specific element of the game, and you're calming down on having to go farm a new mythic to replace all your Order's Wrath, your Pillars of Nirn, your Data Trickery. Finally, for once, we got a 4 or 5 month runway where we can just enjoy the type of content we have in the game, and we can enjoy the game probably until February or March. So what's going to be happening the rest of the time in ESO is you got November 1st, this launches on PC. You're going to have a lot of events. You're going to have the October Witches Festival, you're going to have the New Life event, maybe a couple others. Then you're going to have kind of the preview and the chapter coming forward. And that's really the big question I want to leave you with. What in the world is going to come in 2023? Look, if you're asking me, I would hope there's a class, a skill line, something combat related. Me personally, Tales of Tribute to me was a complete misfire. I do not like it. I cannot stand playing the game, and I'd rather play Pokemon with my son. Pokemon gang! But what do you think? I'm just one player, and hopefully we get something mega coming next year, because the MMO market has a lot of competition, and so we'll see what's going to happen. Until then, I appreciate you watching. Like and subscribe, and we'll see you next time.